Okay, get ready to ignite your enthusiasm for the future of the public services with Transform Gov, the podcast where digital government comes to life. And I'm your host, Maeve Kneafsey. Our very special guest on this episode is Barry Lowry, Ireland's third government CIO for the Department of Public Expenditure and Law Reform, and probably somebody you've all heard of, or perhaps you might even know. So Barry isn't a man with authority, or without authority rather. He has authority, but he's also a pioneer who prefers the power of partnership over mandates. And since taking the helm in 2016, his approach of using the carrot rather than the stick has really transformed Ireland's digital landscape. And today we're exploring how Barry's passion for positive change and his collaborative strategies have really impacted on what we're doing right now. So Barry, when we spoke earlier, I got the real impression that you really do love your job. So why do you love your job so much?
Well, first of all, Maeve, thanks for having me on the podcast.
You're very welcome.
And why do I love my job so much? Because no 2 days are the same, and no day or week turns out the way that you planned it. And I think I'm somebody who likes to run on adrenaline anyway. I do like to plan, but you almost plan in the job knowing that your plans aren't going to just work out exactly as you want. But I get to meet all sorts of fantastic people within the industry, within academia, within society itself, and across government. I get to work very closely with a number of ministers, and I just love the buzz of the role, and I love the fact that, it is, or you can really make a difference, and that's important to me.
Yeah, and so your role, it was your first role in Ireland, working in the Irish government, was it, when you became CIO?
Yes, I had been the equivalent of the CIO in Northern Ireland. Mm-hmm. I had a very long job title. It was called the Director of Shared Services Strategy and Head of Profession.
Okay.
But it broadly meant the same thing. And I was contacted by someone who had been a previous CIO in Northern Ireland, one of the two previous CIOs in Ireland. And he said to me, this job has become available and I think you would love it and they would love you. And so I applied and the rest is history.
And was it a stretch for you, do you think? Because it was a bigger mandate, wasn't it, when you joined the Irish government?
The thing about Northern Ireland is that it's obviously part of the UK, and therefore it's the key things happen in London. So part of my responsibilities in the role would have been to go to London once a month and get involved in some of that decision making, but it wasn't really yours, and things like welfare and taxation and all of those things were all what's called reserve matters. So it appealed to me to be involved in everything. I am one of those people that just never say no, because I just see more and more opportunities as a blessing, if you like, and a privilege. But what I did get up there was a lot of experience of the political system, of dealing with the industry. I would have worked really closely with the industry and academia up there. I would have worked really closely with ministers. So I had an experience, I guess, which transferred relatively easily to Ireland. And that probably stood me in good stead as well.
And you weren't unfamiliar with the landscape or the culture, because was your grandfather from Ballinasloe?
My grandfather's from Ballinasloe. And I remember actually when the HR person in the department was talking to me, and she said, so do you think you'll be all right? Do you know anybody, in Ireland? And after I got to the 10th or 11th name, she said, okay, I think you'll be all right.
And most of them were related.
Reserve your seat at the Ireland e-Government Awards and the Leadership Summit, taking place on the 19th of September 2024 at the Radisson Blu Hotel in Dublin 2. Early bird tickets available until the 19th of July. Full details at digitalgovawards.com.
So what do you believe the job of the CIO is in your eye? What is the core deliverable for you?
Yeah, I think CIO is a term that somehow fell out of fashion and got abused a bit around the early 2000s, and probably for about 10 years. And I think it's been reclaimed back. So what is it? In some respects, it's the chief architect of government. And I remember years ago, I was doing a master's in innovation management. It was a north-south. It was where I made a lot of the contacts that I was able to rhyme off so easily. But one of the lectures in that was Joe McDonough of Trinity College. And he talked about ICT-enabled transformational leadership. And this required 4 particular skill sets. And you either had to deploy these yourself or work collegiately so as you could enable them. So they were architect, engineer, humanist, and broker. And in some respects, that did perfectly sum up what the role of a CIO is. You're almost like the super scrum master, if we can use agile terms. In other words, you let good people be good and you try and address the obstacles, whether they're political or legal or whatever it happens to be, and you try and keep things on target and move things forward. And that's broadly a lot of the job.
So when you first came in, the first thing you did, I think, was to start talking to people. So tell me, what did you do when you first sat in the role?
I was very conscious because I'd spoken actually to both my predecessors and they'd given me tips. And one of the best tips that I got was, and the person started by saying, but you'll do this anyway, was don't let anyone feel left out. He felt that was a mistake that he made, that he focused on the big, heavy-hitting departments.
Okay.
And actually a lot of the critical areas were outside that inner circle, if you like. So my first few weeks was spent going to meet every Secretary General and everyone else who invited me to meet them and talking to them about change and how, we had a collective ambition, which was to use digital technology, serve the people of Ireland and our other stakeholders as best we possibly could. And there was a real opportunity to work together in this. I saw myself working for them as much as for my own.
And how did they react to
General.
that when you said, I'm working for you?
They reacted well. I mean, most of us, humans are the same. If someone comes in and says, I want to help you, tell me where I can make a difference for you, they'll tell you. And that was broadly how the conversations worked. But I think I built relationships which served me well, and I think served the collective purpose well going forward. I mean, to get to Secretary General, there's terrific people at that level, and to ignore their wise counsel would just be, in my view, silly.
Yeah, madness, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if it's available to you and you ask, can you meet them, and they invite you into their room, then, listen and ask questions and learn. That would be my...
I mean, another kind of CIO might think, I know I'm advising the government, I'm inviting all the departments, I'll give them advice and tell them to go off and do it, and then they can come back and report to me. But that's not your way of doing things.
Not at all.
And why? Have you had that experience where you've been the recipient of that, or is it just something you've learned?
I've met individuals in their time in senior technology positions and other positions, and they've always portrayed themselves as, if you like, the white hat cowboy. It's all been mayhem before and I'm here to fix it. You'll never fix anything like that. I've always aligned myself with great leaders that have been, if you like the term, servant leaders or participative leaders or whichever term, you like to use, but they're always open to ideas. They're always encouraging people to participate. I mentioned Joe McDonough before, and I've said to you before, one of his greatest ever lines is, the best way to lead transformation is honor the past and invite people to co-create a better future. I think that's a fantastic mantra to live your life by. And that's how I've always worked since I first heard it.
Very interesting and a different approach. And obviously it's working because things are going really well for our position within the digital rankings, if you like. But in 2016, when you started, we were in post-crash and it was still a really painful time.
Yeah, I mean, I would call the post-crash probably the time of infrastructure deficit, if we can use that term. We all know about the roads that weren't built or the hospitals that weren't built or the schools that weren't built or modernized. But actually, technology had suffered as well. And so Ireland was broadly living off the success of the 2 or 3 organisations who really did things well.
Mm-hmm.
But there was a lot of deficit if you looked in other places. And there still is. One of the criticisms in Ireland is the number of public services where you still have to download the PDF and fill it in and post it.
Yeah.
We need to root those out and fix them. And we're working our way through them. And in OGCIO, we've built a technical or digital means whereby we can help fix them. So it's about working with the departments and encouraging that constant evolution and change.
So are you providing a centralised access to services and knowledge through your office, or is it more that you're guiding and advising?
It's both. So just how the office works, there's basically a number of key parts to it. The first one is the strategy policy arm.
Mm-hmm.
The second one is the operational arm, because we do provide services. We provide government as a platform. We provide government networks. We provide infrastructure services and so on. And the third one is a governance arm, which is underpinned by legislation. So what we do is when we see submissions coming in to do IT projects, if there's a way to just rethink them slightly and do them better using something that exists already,
very good.
Then we do that. So a key part of what we own, the government as an asset, is what the OECD would call government as a platform. In other words, a range of solutions that can be adapted and moved or reused for other purposes. So gov.ie is a classic example. MyGovID, the identity system that is run by DSP, is a key example of that. And that run by DSP is a key thing, because OGCIO don't have to build all the components.
So you don't have to start from scratch, right? Isn't that no?
So, for example, Revenue provide the unique business identifier for business. DSP actually provide MyGovID. DEC are responsible for the error code. So it's about basically taking the best of what we've got and making sure it's understood by the wider community and reused as many times as possible.
Yes, that makes perfect sense, but it's not easy to do. But I suppose that's your central role. And in terms of, the advances you've made since 2016, let's just go up to maybe 2022. What were the big things that were delivered that you were really, I suppose, proud of and that were big achievements?
So to do that, I maybe need to talk about the 5 building blocks of the strategy. So the top one was digital government, then data, and then 3 enablers, which was governance, skills, and infrastructure. So taking those in order, the digital government, what we believed, because we worked with the community of heads of IT and we developed a roadmap for taking forward the strategy. But we believed that really promoting MyGovID and building and promoting the UBI for business and building a portal that people could easily find the services through an authoritative source was absolutely key to this. So MyGovID in 2016 had less than 10,000 verified users.
And just so in case anybody doesn't know, I'm sure they all do, but MyGov is basically your ID, your unique identifier, to engage with government, right? Or any government service.
Absolutely, because if we're going to do online government, we need to absolutely trust that we're not giving you someone else's data.
Yeah.
We're giving you your own data.
You can access a whole load of services, right?
Absolutely.
From the user end.
Yes. Yes. And numerous services now are available through MyGovID.
And there was big challenges at the beginning, because I remember registering for MyGov very early on because what I'm interested in. And there was a lot of loopholes, a lot of things to kind of barriers to actually getting yourself set up. But that's changed, I think, quite a lot now.
I think it's a very slick service. I mean, I arrived in 2016 and they put me in a taxi and took me down to Parnell Street. And there was somebody waiting and I got my public services card and got my MyGovID, that night. And I thought this was fabulous. But as I said, at the time, there was less than 10,000 verified accounts. What that means is people who had actually followed that journey that I had gone to an intro office, been verified, by bringing identity documentation, giving them my mobile phone so they knew that if I was holding that mobile phone, the chances were it was me online, and setting up my MyGovID account. So there's less than 10,000. As of today, we're close to 2.6 million verified accounts.
That's way ahead, isn't it, than the European average?
Way ahead. And the thing is, everybody in Ireland that gets an account uses it for something. Whereas in other parts of Europe, they all are given accounts, but
they're not
sat in
utilising
some sock drawer or something. The password, they don't use them. So Ireland's usage is actually double the EU average.
And why is our usage so high?
I think people like the service.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like anything. If you make things convenient and easy to use, then people want to use them. And interestingly, we've carried out a public consultation on digital. And what we're finding, which fascinates me, is those who don't use digital government, the vast majority want to, but aren't enabled adequately to do it. In other words, they don't have access to the technology, the infrastructure itself, or they don't have access to the training or learning. And so it's given us a real North Star to work towards and try and enable more people to use the digital journey. Now, there'll always be those who just don't want to. They feel intimidated by it, and that's absolutely fine. How we always describe it is digital benefits everyone, because if more people use digital, you're freeing up resources to help those that need the manual journey most, or the assisted digital journey as well. So
MyGov would be definitely top of your list then of since 2016 as something.
Yeah, gov.ie would be close.
Okay.
Because we didn't have a portal for government. We looked at what the best in Europe was. The UK were generally perceived to have the best. So we looked at what they had, and we always ask ourselves, not how do we mimic that? How do we do it even better? And I think we had a pretty good go. During COVID, the value of gov.ie really came to the fore. I remember the Friday night where the Taoiseach made that fantastic speech about what was going to need to be done. And he mentioned gov.ie and more information. And we were constantly, online with Amazon ramping up the capacity. We just never thought that we would get the number of hits that we did. And we got 100 million hits.
And what were people particularly focusing in on, looking for?
So first of all, it was all about where is the virus actually taking hold.
Okay.
And so we worked with our colleagues in Ordnance Survey Ireland and CSO, and we built the most fantastic information portal using maps and hotspots and so on. So people were using that. Always when the Taoiseach made a speech or said something about the pandemic, he would reference there was more information available on gov.ie. So government was very, very open about the risk and the mitigations and what people needed to do. And I think Ireland's whole response to that probably demonstrated a deep trust in each other to be responsible, and that our government was giving us the right guidelines, and we tried to follow them. And then, of course, there was the opportunity to offer help, and we built a service for that. And then the big thing was the vaccination advice and where to go, the online form, and then the digital COVID certificate and the ability to download this government credential, which said that you had either recovered from COVID or been vaccinated. And then over time, as things got a little bit easier, we set up a facility with testing labs and pharmacies and so on, that you could go in. If you were going on holiday, you could go in and get a test on a Monday, and by Tuesday morning, the pharmacy would have your digital COVID certificate for you. So,
were you bringing in a whole mix of different technologies and people, and because you had to move fast, right?
Yeah.
And I presume you weren't building everything from scratch.
The digital COVID certificate, I think there was 9 public service bodies and 4 private sector, and we were doing morning and evening stand-ups. And we never, ever got into the same room at the same time. It was an amazing achievement of Zoom, And and just the ability. But actually, over time, I know we often talk about remote working and so on, and can you build relationships online in the same way as you can in person? Well, the answer is you can't. But if it's the only thing available,
you
work. Will ultimately make it work. You will build friendships and relationships and so on. But just to give you, for instance, on that particular story, I got the phone call from Taoiseachs and we had 6 weeks to build this digital COVID certificate and for it to be live. And one of the things that we realized was that we were going to get data for people who've been vaccinated, but that data was not going to contain an email address for every single person. So if we didn't have an email address, then we had to print and post. And we reckoned that we would need to print and post around 1 million, 1.25 million vaccination certificates within a couple of weeks. And I thought, how are we going to do this? And then I suddenly thought, Revenue have a printing facility. And I phoned the CIO in Revenue on a Monday morning, and he said, what is it you need? And I told him, and he went, how many do you think you'll need? And I told him, and there was sort of like a quiet at the other end of the phone. And then he said, look, we're there for you. Whatever you need, you'll get. And they were fantastic.
And that was sending it out by post, or was it by email?
That was printing
post?
And post.
Okay,
yeah, email. What we did was, how the process actually worked was the people got vaccinated, and then overnight, the HSE sent us a secure file, and we took it into our cloud environment, and we produced then the digital credential out of that, and which effectively was a QR code. We've all become very familiar with those over time, but it was a QR code, and it was done obviously with the technology and using keys in such a way that it couldn't be replicated anywhere else. It was clearly an Ireland government, credential. And then if we had an email, they were posted that night. And if we didn't have an email, they were printed and posted that morning. The following morning. And so it was a pretty slick process.
Reserve your seat at the Ireland e-Government Awards and the Leadership Summit, taking place on the 19th of September 2024 at the Radisson Blu Hotel in Dublin 2. Early bird tickets available until the 19th of July. Full details at digitalgovawards.com.
You mentioned, working with government and the ministers. Are they particularly tech savvy? Do you think they're more now post-COVID? Because I think I had a feeling from talking to other people plus you that maybe they know more about agriculture than they do about technology.
Yeah,
and how that'll transform the country. So where are they now?
I'm incredibly blessed because, well, the two ministers I work to, Pascal Donoghue claims he's not tech savvy, and like everything, Pascal knows a lot more than he sometimes lets on. Pascal is a remarkably astute individual when it comes to contributing to anything. Everybody's aware of that knows him or has met him or listened to him. Oisín Smith's quite different because Oisín's had experience working in the statistical side and he's experience working in the tech side. And he is definitely a technophile. He would tell you that himself. He's hugely interested in what they're doing in other countries when he gets to attend the D9 and meet other ministers. He's hugely interested in the art of the possible. He's always reading stuff and so on. So he will debate with you, options and so on. So,
but then I presume you're also trying to help the SecGens across all departments.
Yeah.
And so do they have a similar experience?
They're different. They're different. Some of them would be very tech savvy. Some of them less so, but they've got an empathy. And some of them would say, I don't really want to try and understand this. I just want to trust you.
Okay.
You're getting it done.
It comes up again.
And all of
it?
that works. All of that works,
And do you believe that, you mentioned there academia, industry, and society. So that's a theme that comes through, I think, in terms of your belief and what's going to make our digital landscape here even better. Why do you feel they have to come together? What's so key about that?
Because they're all key stakeholders. That was really brought home to us by when COVID started to look like it was being managed. President von der Leyen did her State of the Union address. I think it was autumn 2021. And she talked about digital and green as being the way in which Europe would regrow its economy post-COVID.
Green,
yeah,
okay.
Climate-oriented actions. And actually, then they produced 3 areas of change. The first one was the Recovery and Resilience Fund, which Ireland did very well out of. The second one was what was called the Digital Compass, which was commensurate targets. And then the third one was regulation to help with the achievement of the targets. But if you look at the targets themselves, it was called the Digital Compass. And it talked about digital government, digital infrastructure, digital business, and digital skills as being the 4. Well, that's really when I talk about the academia, society, and business and government needing to come together. It very much aligns with that. So if you look at, for example, the contribution that the tech sector, whether it's Indigenous or FDI, makes to our economy in Ireland, it's absolutely enormous. And why do they come to Ireland? Well, there's a number of reasons, but one of them is the skills that we have. How are we going to continue to provide a skills supply?
Yes.
Well, we've got to invest in skills, and we've got to put the narrative across to the mummies and daddies of Ireland that actually tech is a great career for your kids, and especially your daughters. And OGCIO would be disproportionate to other businesses in terms of we have a relatively high female intake. And, you know, we talk about diversity, but one of the great areas of diversity is that males and females think differently, and they bring different skills, and they both bring critical skills to transformational change. And so encouraging females that they can play a huge part in tomorrow's world, if you like, is so important. And that's why getting a narrative that covers those 4 areas is so important.
And if on the skill side, if, for example, we got a lot of young adults or kids coming forward and saying we want to get into this area, IT, whatever it is, can the universities cope with it?
Well, there's a number of routes now into it, because obviously universities and further education play a valuable role in skill supply. But we've used now the ICT apprenticeship scheme, working with FIT. And that's hugely successful. And that's one that's close to my heart, because in my own career, I never intended working in the tech sector. I thought when I was studying at school, I wanted to be a teacher or possibly a journalist.
Yes.
I got invited to go to university. And at that time, I was working in the civil service for the summer with a load of unemployed teachers. And I thought, there's no future here. So I thought I got offered a job in the civil service. They interviewed me and offered me a job. I thought, well, I'll take a year and decide what I'm going to do.
I've heard that many times.
Yeah.
From very long-term serving civil service. I'll do a year and then I'll see if I like it.
And in that year, I got persuaded to apply for this scheme to become a trainee programmer in the civil service. And that was it. I was smitten from there.
It's a very similar story. You may not know this, but Louise Jevons from the Department of Justice, she said, I'm going to do a year and then to see what it's like. And then she got a program where she got to be trained while in the civil service. And then you mentioned FIT. And Maria McCann, who we interviewed a couple of episodes ago, she also is very involved in FIT. So that's an apprenticeship program for all sorts of, tech, I suppose, skills, isn't it?
Absolutely. And interestingly enough, what was in my heart was I was lucky, but some people miss out in the sector because they went to the wrong school, weren't given the right careers advice. Their parents maybe weren't fully informed or whatever that is. So in some respects, the ICT Tech apprenticeship is your second chance for a first career, if you like. I set a scheme up in Northern Ireland, and I was saying I was willing to meet anybody when I started the new role. One of the first people to reach out to me was Peter David, the CEO of FIT. And he came in with his whole pitch planned. And I said...
Thinking he was going to have to persuade you.
Yeah. I said, you're the guy that does the apprenticeships. And he said, yes. And I said, how are we going to get a tech apprenticeship up and running? So that was it.
Yeah.
And he said, well, coincidentally, we're working on this. So it's a fantastic opportunity. And I think apprenticeships bring something to the technology workforce that wouldn't otherwise exist.
Yes, yes.
And a lot of them have work experience. A lot of them have worked, say, in restaurants or bars or whatever that happens to be. And that actually gives you certain skill sets.
It's a practical kind of reality, isn't it? That you can put things in context
Teamwork,
very quickly. Teamwork.
Customer orientation, organization skills.
Mm-hmm.
So you can take all of these and bring tech to it, assuming someone's got the aptitude. And you can create really successful contributors to the workforce.
Well, look, we're flying on through this, and that's why, by the way, folks, we're going to be doing part 2 of this interview. We're not going to just do part 1 because, in a way, we've kind of looked back a little bit, whereas I think we should start looking towards the future. But thank you so much for being here for part 1, which is fascinating. And now we're going to talk about in the next episode what's coming down the track or what you're in the middle of doing at the moment. But we want to thank everybody here for being here, you in particular, and also to our producer, Conal Moran, to our sound, which is Luke Delaney, video, Julia Valkovich, and thank you so much to Dublin South Podcast Studio.